Hello and welcome back to Southview House Exotic. So in today's video we are going to just have a little tour around the garden and see some of the more rare and unusual plants which I've collected over the past kind of 3 years that I've been kind of collecting plants. So here we have a Manihot Grahami, which is quite an unusual plant. It's quite hard to find. I bought this particular specimen from the big plant nursery and it was literally about this big. And I bought that last year and I've grown that on. I've had it in the greenhouse over winter and it did kind of defoliate, which is fairly normal for these kind of plants. And you sort of end up with a bit of a stick. And then basically this year, as you can see, it is now flushed up with a brand new set of leaves. And there was a little bit of dieback on the main trunk, but it's looking really good. So this particular plant I've got in a kind of mainly sunny position, but there is a little bit of shelter from the Brahara Mater just to the side of it here, and I'll be growing this on this year, so hopefully it will turn into quite a tall specimen. I think it was about £30, maybe £35. And when they got those in stock, I remember it being that if you basically wanted one, then you had to buy it fast. Otherwise, all the stock goes. So let's have a quick look at some other plants around the garden. So here we have a little collection of 3 palms. Now we've got 2 Jabea chilensis. There's a slightly bigger one here and a slightly smaller one in front of it. And these are notoriously slow growing palms, particularly from when they're super young. So this one is about 10 years old, and this one I believe is about half that age. And the bigger one is now starting to form a decent sized trunk, and eventually hopefully this plant will be the kind of the star of the show in the center of my topiary garden, down in the front garden. Just in front of it here we have a princeps palm, Trachycarpus princeps. So this is a straight princeps. There's no kind of hybridization with this particular specimen. It did actually slightly, not completely sort of spear pull, but some of the new spear was damaged this winter, when basically it was a very wet winter, and also we had a week of really cold weather, so it damaged the central spear. But since then we've got a full kind of brand new leaf coming out here, and then the center spear, the tip of the next leaf is ready to go. So in this section here we have 2 plants of interest. So firstly here we have the Mexican grass tree. So this is a Dasylirium longifolium, and this has really stiff kind of grass-like leaves to it. This particular specimen was bought from B&M, but I do actually have another one which I got from Hardy Palms, and both of those companies I've used quite often, to be honest. So this particular plant likes very well drained soil, and it's not often available to buy. It's actually quite interesting that B&M have started to stock these, and they literally I've only ever seen one in all the stores that I've been looking at. But if you can get a hold of them, you probably be able to get one online. But size wise they're usually offered a lot smaller than this one here, but eventually they grow into a fantastic specimen. Now just to the side of it here we have the Brasioptris mitis. So this was bought from, I think, AV Plants, which is an online plant store, and this has fantastic unusual shaped leaves to it. It basically forms a very kind of spiky trunk to it. So here we can see kind of the start of it forming a woody trunk, and the spikes which are on there. This plant is basically grown for its fantastic leaf shape. It's a little bit like a fatsia leaf, but with more of a kind of a cutout sort of section to it. It does actually, the slugs and snails do like them, so I've got a little slug barrier here to try and prevent them. And so far it's been okay actually. Maybe a little bit of munching on this one, but not too bad. So they generally like quite a shady position, hence why I've got this particular one. It's kind of underneath a clematis here and sheltered by this other palm to the side of it, which is a Liverstonia chinensis. And again, that one is not offered very often either. It's not kind of your mainstream kind of plant there. Now over here we have what is known as a Puya. These again, they look a little bit like a Dazzlerium or a kind of Yucca plant. They like very well drained soil. And again, they're quite hard to find. So I bought a couple from the big plant nursery fairly recently, and quite often they're not available for sale. One of the main reasons why probably is because they have amazingly spiky leaves to them. So just on the side of them, they have these sort of thorns, which kind of they can break off in your hand quite easily. So they are quite a sort of dangerous plant, really. But a nice kind of silvery blue foliage to this particular one. So here we have the second kind of Puya plant. You can see those thorns on there. They do have amazing flowers, which basically they send up a flower spike, a little bit like a yucca. There's a good example there of one throwing up some flowers there. Another thing that is quite interesting is when you look at the leaves and the foliage, they are very, very similar to this Festiculata bicolor, I think is how you pronounce it. Very, very similar leaves, not quite as spiky there, but very, very similar. But this one is more of a kind of like a bromeliad, so it has a really interesting sort of bicolored flower, which is sort of close to the main stem when it flowers. Okay, and here we have three little palm trees which are quite unusual. So the one in the big pot at the back there is the Trachycarpus nanus. Now this is an exceptionally rare palm and is very, very hard to get hold of. It basically doesn't really form any kind of meaningful trunk to it. So you get the lovely kind of Trachycarpus leaves, but coming up on their kind of stems from the ground. So yeah, something a little bit different there. Then on the left hand side as well, we have Trachycarpus latisectus, which is a Trachycarpus that is not quite as hardy as the others, but does have a fantastic kind of leaf shape. And in the small pot on the right hand side there, we have the Trachycarpus eucharelensis, I think is how you say that one. And this was kind of bought as a very small kind of seedling, and it's one that I'm going to be growing on. So over here we have a Sabal palm. So this is the Sabal palmetto. So I bought this one fairly recently from, again, the big plant nursery. They tend to have some quite unusual plants from time to time. And this particular palm, when I saw it was available, I thought I'm definitely going to go for one of those. Now it is reasonably hardy, so it's hardy to about -13, I think. Its main downfall is that it requires quite a bit of heat in the summer to get it kind of growing on there. So although it's not going to sustain too much sort of winter damage, it could be a very, very slow palm. So I've got this in a kind of south facing position where It's kind of like I've got the garage door behind it, so that should warm up in the summer sun and throw out some heat, and that should really help this palm to develop. Generally, Sabal palms aren't really offered for sale too much in the UK. They're quite similar to the Trachycarpus, and they are so much easier to kind of deal with. So another palm which I do have, which I've grown from a kind of smaller plant, is the Sabal minor. And this is the Sabal minor. So this particular palm, very, very slow growing. I'm told that it doesn't kind of start to really get going until it's sort of 20-25 Celsius. So definitely the south of the UK and in a nice kind of sunny position, which this one's in here. It's got a really good kind of root system. It forms almost like an underground kind of trunk, a little bit like the Trachycarpus nanus. It has amazing kind of bluey green foliage to it. Obviously very Trachycarpus-like. Very, very hardy. It's one of the most hardy, but it is quite slow to get going. So it just offers something a little bit different. So yeah, and this particular one I got from Architectural Plants, which is another kind of plant store which is very close to the big plant nursery over in kind of Pulborough in Sussex area. And I bought this. It was kind of about half the size. It wasn't too expensive. I think it was about 30 odd quid, but it's growing into a really nice specimen. So over here we have a couple of Pseudopanax. Now these are a little bit more unusual. You don't quite often see these advertised in the UK. I've never really seen them in any kind of mainstream garden centres. They are a bit of a curiosity. You either love them or you hate them. They basically are a type of kind of small tree, and they essentially have one main kind of central stem, and they have very long thin leaves coming off of it, and it does resemble a little bit of like a dead twig, but they are very unusual, and they're quite useful in the tropical style garden, mainly because they grow very upright. So if you're short on kind of physical planting space, then having something like this can add something a little bit more interesting to the garden. They love well-drained soil. The sort of hardiness varies from kind of -5 to kind of -10 Celsius. I leave these ones outside, and I have done in the winter. The only thing I did is I just tucked them under the sort of garden arbor a little bit, so they had a little bit of overhead protection from the mega rain that we had kind of all the latter half of the winter there. So these are two. So we have crassifolius, which is this one here, and then we have ferox, which is a bit more of a kind of a browny yellow one rather than the greeny yellow. So this just shows you a close up. You can see this is the new bud forming there, and you see this one has got very long sort of green leaves, but with a sort of yellowy sort of center. And this one here is a bit more kind of knobbly in its appearance, but it looks more brown. They were bought at the same kind of time, and they are roughly the same kind of height. It's also related to this plant over here, which is again Pseudopanax. This is dark star, and in the winter actually its leaves went quite black, but they've now kind of greened up again, which is really interesting. But they are related. And here we have another couple of the Pseudopanax that I bought fairly recently. Again, these were from the big plant nursery. I haven't really seen them sort of advertised anywhere else. So we have Pseudopanax trifoliatus, which is this one here, which you can see it has basically 3 of those leaves off of each kind of branch there. And then we have Pseudopanax chainsaw, which, as you can see here, it's got a really interesting sort of leaf that sort of resembles a bit of a chainsaw there. And this has put on quite a bit of growth. So basically, all of that growth is since I bought it about a kind of month ago, I would say. Again, not often advertised for sale. And this is the garden arbor, which they get tucked under, and the agaves just sit on the like seat there, so it just gives a bit of overhead protection in the winter time. Okay, and here we have a Setaria palmifolia. So it's basically a palm leaf grass, and it's quite interesting. I've got it in a slightly shady position here, underneath my kind of irrigation area, and I've got an alocasia just to the right of it there. But this again, I've never seen advertised for sale anywhere else. But a very interesting curiosity. So we're up near my kind of sort of woodland garden in the back part of my garden here. And this is the kind of Schefflera area. So here we have Schefflera alpina, which is this one here. Really interesting leaves to it. And yeah, then we've got over here, we've got Schefflera taiwaniana, which is actually very similar. It's probably got more leaves to it. It's slightly lost in this bed at the moment, but it will grow up to form a sort of small tree. And then just to the side here, we have Schefflera de la Valle, which has massive leaves, looking really, really good. And it's putting out lots of new growth. Again, not often advertised for sale, so when they are advertised, it's best just to snap them up, because there's quite a few people that collect tropical style plants, and they can get really expensive as well. Okay, and back to some more unusual palms. So here we have what looks like a Trachycarpus fortunei, but it's not. It's actually a Brahea adulis. Now these again are not offered for sale very often. They're hardy to about -5, -6, so not super hardy. This particular one is in a pot sunk in the ground, so basically I have to pull the pot up in the winter and move it into a more sort of secluded position. But they've got a slightly different kind of bluey green leaf to them, and I think the leaves get bigger as they get older. But one that is quite similar to Trachycarpus, but something that's a little bit different. I think I got this one from the Norfolk Olive Tree Company, which is where I bought my Brahea armata from, which again are a little bit more unusual. And as you can see here, the leaf shape is exactly the same, but this has a more of a sort of silvery blue foliage, and is quite often, this one is picked as the preferred kind of option. I have two of these in the garden in various kind of different sizes of kind of growth, but they are fantastic sort of contrast palms. And over here we have the Boutia erythpatha. Now this is a very unusual palm, not often advertised for sale. They had a Hardy Palms basically had a batch of them of a real decent size. I think they were about £300, so quite an expensive sort of investment palm. As you can see, this one is doing fantastic. The first year that I put it in the ground, it got a little bit of frost damage on some of the fronds there, but I had a shelter over it this year. So I didn't fleece it within the shelter. It was literally a polycarbonate shelter just to protect it from the worst of the cold and rain and everything. And it worked really well. I think ultimately, if the winter was going We have sort of -7, and this one has survived really well. If we were forecast lower than that, I would probably wrap the trunk up, and then obviously the shelter would be over it as well to kind of offer that double layer of protection. When these do become available from time to time, you have to act really fast because they sell really quickly. They are a very attractive palm. They look similar to the Boutia palm, odorata or capitata, I think it's called. And that particular palm is more of a kind of a bluey, greeny, silver leafed plant, whereas this is more of the solid kind of green. But it's a very neat looking palm, and I can definitely report that down here in the south it is doing mega well. And just to cover yuccas, so this particular yucca is the linearis, which has a finer leaf than the rostrata, which you kind of see everywhere at the moment. These particular ones are, although they're not a super rare plant, there's just not many people that offer them for sale. So again, this one came from the big plant nursery. They had some smaller ones earlier on in the year, which I think were about £30, £35. The bigger one here was £100. But it's got a really nice silvery, greeny blue foliage to it, and eventually will form a massive kind of pom-pom shape. And it just offers something a little bit different to the Yucca rostrata. So if they do become available or you see them at a decent size, they are worth getting hold of, particularly if you've got the rostratas in the garden and you want something a little different. Okay, and in the front garden here we have, I think it's called a Vitax. Really interesting plant with great foliage. It's a shrub, and it will get quite large, so it will get a kind of about 1.5 meters tall. And it's grown mainly for the foliage, but it does actually have a really nice kind of purpley blue flower to it. It just offers something a little bit different. It seems quite hard to get hold of. I think you can get hold of it online, but again, not many sort of regular garden centres stock it, which is a bit of a surprise, really. Likes a kind of sunny site, and it's reasonably frost hardy. So I think it can go down to about -5 ish. It defoliates every year, and you end up with that kind of buddleia type look to it, where it's like very kind of stick like, and you just basically put a fleece over it in winter, and that protects it. But it is definitely worth it because as I say, the foliage is really unusual, and not super unusual. But I just thought I'd show you guys this specimen. So this is a Tetropanax papyrifera rex, and you can really see that this one definitely has the rex type leaves. So this particular plant here, I'm filming, it's at the end of May, and when I put my hand next to it, look at the size of that leaf already. It's really impressive plant. It obviously forms a kind of woody stem, and you can see here the stem is looking really good, and there's some little pups which it's producing down there as well. You can get the papyrifera, is reasonably common now. It seems to be one of those sort of staple tropical style plants, but getting hold of rex is a little bit more difficult. The way to tell is that basically they've got these huge sort of cutouts in the leaf, and it kind of looks a little bit like a T-Rex's kind of their little claws and everything. So yeah, really decent sized, big leafed plant, well worth trying to get hold of. But you have to, I would say, if you're going to look for one of these, try and buy it in leaf so that you can actually see that it's definitely a Rex variant. Because a lot of places advertise them as Rex and they're not. So I hope you guys have enjoyed looking at some of the rarities which I've got here at Southview House Exotic. As you can see, it's quite palm heavy when it comes to the sort of rarer plants that I have, and there's just a few other kind of non-palms there. But it's mainly because I enjoy collecting palm trees. That's one of my main interests within tropical style gardening. So, hope you've enjoyed the video. Please like and subscribe as always, and I'll see you guys on the next one.